Your motorcycle brand says more about you than your dating profile ever could. Whether you're a Harley diehard or still pretending your scooter counts, we're diving headfirst into the stereotypes and straight-up roasts behind the bikes we ride. Buckle up to find out what your motorcycle brand says about you. Suzuki ownership is the motorcycle equivalent of finding a designer suit at a thrift store. You're getting premium performance without the premium price tag, and you're not afraid to tell everyone about your savvy decision. Your GSX2R or V-Strom was purchased based on an almost mathematical formula of performance per dollar, and you defend this decision with spreadsheet-worthy precision. You've used the phrase "just as good as" so many times it should be printed on your riding jacket. The rest of us roll our eyes at your budget-conscious approach that often crosses into cheapskate territory. Your idea of maintenance is fix it when it breaks, and your bike looks like it survived a post-apocalyptic scavenger hunt with mismatched fairings and zip-tied turn signals. You'll spend hours arguing why your 10-year-old Gixxer is basically the same as a brand-new R1 while ignoring the duct tape holding your seat together. But your pragmatic approach to motorcycling is secretly admirable. You understand that motorcycles are tools meant to be ridden, not precious objects to be coddled. Your budget-conscious approach means you're actually out riding while others are saving up for their next accessory. There's something refreshingly honest about prioritizing function over form and miles over appearance. You're getting the most bang for your buck, and in a hobby that can quickly become a financial black hole, that's actually pretty smart. Nothing says I make poor financial decisions quite like spending $950 on an electric dirt bike designed for children but marketed to adults with more money than sense. The Indian EFTR Jr. is a miniature electric replica of Indian's FTR 1200 flat track racer. With a top speed of 15 miles per hour and a battery range of about 140 minutes in low mode, this isn't a motorcycle. It's an expensive toy that adults use to pretend they're riding a real bike. It's marketed as a serious piece of equipment when it's really just a glorified toy. Powered by a pathetic electric motor that produces the equivalent of about 3 horsepower, this 175-pound motorcycle is what happens when marketing departments are allowed to run wild. It's the motorcycle equivalent of those plastic kitchens adults buy for children, except you're the child and you paid for it yourself. The EFTR Jr. doesn't even qualify for MPG ratings because it's not a real vehicle. It's a backyard plaything masquerading as a motorcycle, complete with a price tag that could get you a decent used actual motorcycle. If you're an adult riding this around your property, you're not a motorcyclist. You're a grown person on a children's toy. The only thing more embarrassing than being seen on one is having to explain to your friends why you bought it. But if you think a toy pretending to be a motorcycle is ridiculous, wait until you see what happens when a scooter tries to cosplay as a cruiser. Have you ever looked at a perfectly good motorcycle and thought, you know what this needs? A Chevy small block V8 engine. No? Well, someone did. And that's how we ended up with the Boss Hoss, the motorcycle equivalent of putting a jet engine on a shopping cart. The Boss Hoss isn't just big, it's comically oversized. Powered by a 350 or 502 cubic inch V8 engine because apparently 100 horsepower wasn't enough. This monstrosity weighs in at over 1,100 pounds. That's not a typo. It literally weighs half a car's weight. The rear tires are not made of motorcycle tires. They are literally car tires. We're talking about an 8.2-liter engine with over 445 to 563 horsepower on a motorcycle. Riding a Boss Hoss isn't motorcycling, it's survival. The handling is exactly what you'd expect from strapping a car engine between 2 wheels. Non-existent. Corners aren't taken so much as negotiated with, and stopping this beast requires the kind of forward planning usually reserved for ocean liners. Then there's the heat. Sitting inches away from a V8 engine is like straddling a blast furnace. Hope you enjoy having your inner thighs slow-cooked to medium well while you ride. And fuel economy? Let's just say you'll be on a first-name basis with every gas station attendant within a 20-mile radius of your home. The price tag for this two-wheeled identity crisis? Anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000, depending on how much chrome you want to blind other motorists with. It is beyond overkill for a bike. Twist that throttle too hard, you're gonna jump into another dimension. Confused? Why call this even a bike? It's like navigating a barge across the Atlantic Ocean full of icebergs. If it tips over, don't even try to pick it up. Just bury it where it falls and start a new life. And the fuel consumption drains not only your wallet, but also your mental health. You are looking at around 10 to 15 miles per gallon here, and it only drinks premium. If you think this is nice, get a car instead, more accurate to what you want. The Harley-Davidson V-Rod is what occurs when a company known for making agricultural equipment with wheels decides to build a performance motorcycle. It's the motorcycle equivalent of your 50-year-old uncle wearing skinny jeans and a backwards cap to connect with the youth. Powered by a Porsche-designed 1,130cc Revolution Vive twin engine producing 115 to 125 horsepower, the V-Rod was Harley's attempt to attract younger riders who wanted something that could actually take a corner without scraping the entire undercarriage. The thing is, V-Rod tries to be everything to everyone and ends up being nothing to anyone. A 640-pound behemoth that's too sporty for traditional Harley riders and too heavy for sport bike enthusiasts. Despite its relatively impressive engine, the V-Rod gets a dismal 37 miles per gallon and handles like a shopping cart with a flat wheel. The riding position is a bizarre compromise that leaves you neither comfortable nor in control, with forward controls that make precise handling about as likely as finding affordable healthcare. And let's talk about that radiator. A sacrilegious addition to a Harley that sticks out like a sore thumb. Traditional Harley riders rejected it for not being authentic, while performance riders laughed at its weight and handling. The V-Rod is the perfect bike for someone who wants to tell everyone they ride a Harley, but secretly wishes they bought a Ducati. It's a $17,000 identity crisis on wheels. Kawasaki riders approach motorcycling with the subtlety of a monster truck rally. Your color palette ranges from lime green to nuclear waste green, and you see nothing wrong with this aesthetic choice. You've memorized your bike's horsepower and torque figures and recite them with the reverence others reserve for their children's birthdays. Your phone contains at least a dozen videos of your exhaust note, most filmed in tunnels or parking garages for maximum acoustic effect. The motorcycling community collectively cringes at your monster energy-fueled approach to riding. You treat public roads like your personal racetrack, and your definition of braking in the engine involves redlining it at every opportunity. Your riding gear looks like it was designed by a committee of 13-year-old boys who just discovered energy drinks, and your interpretation of traffic laws is more like guidelines, really. But your childlike enthusiasm for motorcycling is secretly infectious. While the rest of us are overthinking every aspect of riding, you're out there having genuine, uncomplicated fun. Your willingness to push limits has made you a surprisingly skilled rider, and beneath the squid antics lies a genuine passion for mastering your machine. You remind the rest of us that motorcycling should be exhilarating, not just practical. Just maybe keep the wheelies for the track, okay? Some of us want motorcycling to remain legal. Is it a cruiser? Is it a sport bike? Is it a touring bike? Honda's answer was yes to all of those. And the result was a bike that failed spectacularly at being any of those things. Powered by a 670cc parallel twin engine that produces a thoroughly underwhelming 48 horsepower, the CTX 700 is a motorcycle designed by committee. It has the seating position of a cruiser, the fairing of a sport tourer, and the excitement level of a dishwasher. The criticism here is that it tries to be everything and ends up being nothing. The riding experience is equally baffling. The feet-forward position suggests cruiser, but the relatively high handlebars say touring bike, resulting in a riding position that seems specifically designed to make chiropractors wealthy. And despite its substantial size, the CTX 700 offers minimal storage space, poor passenger accommodations, and handling that can best be described as reluctant. At 500 pounds wet, it's too heavy for its power output, making its 60 miles per gallon fuel economy the only thing worth mentioning. But the real head-scratcher is the optional DCT automatic transmission that Honda grandly marketed as revolutionary. There's nothing revolutionary about paying motorcycle prices for scooter performance. The CTX 700 is the perfect bike for someone who doesn't actually want a motorcycle, but feels obligated to own one. It's the motorcycle equivalent of sensible beige slacks, technically functional, but devoid of any personality or joy. The Honda DN01 is what happens when a motorcycle manufacturer has an existential crisis. Is it a cruiser? Is it a sport bike? Is it a scooter? Honda's answer was yes, and the result was a bike that failed spectacularly at being any of those things. Futuristic design, fully automatic, and has an identity crisis? Yep, you heard me. This bike does not fall in any category. Cruiser, scooter, sport bike, tourer? Absolutely none. Too heavy and long for a sport bike, too expensive and weird for a cruiser, and not practical enough to be a scooter. No storage like a scooter, no bags like a tourer, and definitely no accessories like a cruiser. The riding experience is equally baffling. The feet-forward position suggests cruiser, but the low handlebars say sport bike, resulting in a riding position that seems specifically designed to make chiropractors wealthy. And despite its substantial size, the DN01 offers minimal storage space, poor passenger accommodations, and handling that can best be described as reluctant. Under all that questionable styling sits a 680cc V-twin engine that produces a thoroughly underwhelming 60 horsepower. But the real head-scratcher is the transmission, a hydromechanical automatic CVT that Honda grandly named Human-Friendly Transmission. There's nothing friendly about paying motorcycle prices for scooter performance. It runs in hopes and dreams. And speaking of prices, Honda had the audacity to charge around $15,000 for this confusion on wheels when it launched. That's right, $15,000 for a bike that couldn't decide what it wanted to be when it grew up. The idea was there, just poorly executed. Planning on buying this? Just get yourself a real bike, saving us both some time, away from problems. Ural ownership isn't a transportation choice. It's a commitment to keeping Soviet-era engineering alive through sheer force of will and an apparently unlimited tolerance for mechanical quirks. You didn't buy a motorcycle, you adopted a historical artifact that occasionally runs. Your sidecar rig represents your dedication to the most impractical form of motorcycling ever devised. You've memorized the locations of every Ural dealer within a 500-mile radius and consider them extended family members rather than service providers. The rest of us are amazed by your ability to find joy in machinery that predates modern concepts like reliability and electrical systems that work. You've turned mechanical archaeology into a hobby and treat your bike's quirks like they're charming personality features rather than fundamental design flaws. Your garage looks like a museum of Soviet engineering, complete with spare parts that are older than most riders. The way you describe electrical gremlins as character while push-starting your bike in sub-zero temperatures defies all logic and self-preservation instincts. But your dedication to preserving a unique slice of motorcycling history is genuinely admirable. You're keeping alive a form of motorcycling that connects us to a different era and philosophy of engineering. And there's something beautifully stubborn about your commitment to the unconventional. Your Ural might not be fast or reliable, but it's definitely memorable. And in a world of increasingly similar motorcycles, that individuality is worth preserving. Plus, you can carry a passenger and luggage simultaneously, which is more practical than most of us will admit. Moto Guzzi ownership is the motorcycle equivalent of collecting rare vinyl records. It's not just about transportation, it's about appreciating something unique that most people will never understand. Your motorcycle choice reflects a level of individualism that borders on stubborn defiance of mainstream options. You've become an amateur historian by necessity, able to explain your bike's unusual transverse V-twin engine configuration and the company's century-long history to confused onlookers who mistake your bike for some kind of BMW. You've practiced this explanation so many times, you could deliver it in your sleep. The rest of us question your sanity for choosing a bike that vibrates like it's powered by angry bees and has a parts supply chain that involves international shipping and prayers to Italian motorcycle deities. Your idea of reliability is, it usually starts eventually. And your definition of dealer support is a guy in Milan who checks his email once a month. You've turned mechanical quirks into character features through sheer force of will. But your commitment to riding something truly unique in a world of mass-produced sameness is secretly admirable. You choose passion over practicality, character over convenience, and in doing so, you're preserving recovering a slice of motorcycling history that would otherwise be lost. Your Guzzi isn't just transportation, it's a living museum piece that you've kept on the road through dedication and love. In a world where motorcycles are becoming increasingly homogenized, you're keeping genuine diversity alive, one quirky Italian V-twin at a time. Husqvarna ownership means you've chosen the Swedish approach to getting dirty, methodically, efficiently, and with absolutely no regard for your long-term orthopedic health. You didn't buy a motorcycle, you purchased a subscription to emergency room visits disguised as weekend entertainment. Your 701 Enduro or Vitpilen represents your commitment to finding the most challenging way to get from point A to point B. You see a perfectly good road and immediately start looking for ways to avoid using it, preferring trails that would challenge a mountain goat with anxiety issues. The motorcycle community watches in horror as you treat public roads like connecting sections between the real riding, which apparently happens in places that require tetanus shots to access. You've turned basic self-preservation into a character flaw and consider protective gear optional equipment. Your idea of a relaxing ride involves terrain that would make a trials bike nervous, and you measure successful rides by how much dirt you can shake out of your gear afterward. The way you casually mention getting some air while describing your commute to work terrifies normal people. But your commitment to exploring every inch of available terrain reminds us why motorcycles were invented in the first place. You're keeping the adventure spirit alive in an increasingly sanitized world, and your willingness to go where others fear to tread opens up possibilities the rest of us never considered. Your Husqvarna connects you to landscapes and experiences that four wheels simply can't access, and your fearless approach to riding inspires the rest of us to push our own boundaries, even if we draw the line at actual cliffs. Powered by a single-cylinder 492cc engine that produces a pathetic 34 horsepower, the Blast was supposed to be Harley's gateway drug to get new riders hooked on the brand. Instead, it became a cautionary tale about what happens when you cut too many corners. It tries to be a Harley, but ends up being a headache. Despite its relatively good 65 miles per gallon fuel economy, this 360-pound monstrosity handles like it's allergic to corners. The suspension seems to be made of recycled pogo sticks, and the brakes require the kind of forward planning usually reserved for retirement savings. The Blast's plastic body panels crack if you look at them wrong, and the engine vibrates so violently at certain RPMs that owners report losing fillings. It's like riding a paint mixer that occasionally decides to transport you from one place to another. Eric Buell himself was so embarrassed by this bike that he literally crushed one in a promotional video for his next company. When the creator of your motorcycle publicly destroys one to make a point, perhaps it's time to reconsider your purchase. The Buell Blast is the perfect bike for someone who wants the Harley-Davidson experience of constant maintenance and disappointment, but doesn't have the budget for a full-size Harley. Aprilia ownership is what happens when you mistake a public road for Mugello and your daily commute for a MotoGP qualifying session. You didn't buy a motorcycle. You purchased a barely street-legal race bike that you'll spend more time explaining to insurance adjusters than actually riding. Your RSV4 or Tuono makes sounds that violate several noise ordinances, and you consider this a feature, not a bug. You've memorized lap times from tracks you've never visited and can recite horsepower figures with the precision of a NASA engineer calculating orbital trajectories. The rest of us are tired of your "it's basically a MotoGP bike" speeches, while you struggle to keep up in parking lot maneuvers. Your idea of practical transportation involves full leathers for a grocery run, and you treat speed limits like gentle suggestions from people who clearly don't understand Italian engineering excellence. But when you're carving through canyons on that screaming Italian missile, you make the rest of us question why we settled for anything less aggressive. Your commitment to pure performance over comfort reminds us that motorcycles were meant to be thrilling, not just efficient. There's something intoxicating about riding a machine that shares DNA with actual MotoGP bikes. And your passion for extracting every ounce of performance keeps the sport bike spirit alive in an increasingly practical world. Harley riders aren't just motorcycle owners, they're brand ambassadors for a lifestyle that's equal parts nostalgia and rebellion. Your garage likely contains more Harley-branded items than your actual wardrobe, and you've memorized the company's founding date to drop into conversations. The Harley community is uniquely tribal. You wave exclusively to other Harleys while ignoring sport bikes, as if they're riding invisible motorcycles. Your vocabulary includes terms like bagger, softail, and twin cam, which you use with religious reverence. Let's be honest, you're the vegans of the motorcycle world. How do you know someone rides a Harley? Don't worry, they'll tell you within 30 seconds of meeting them. Your insistence that loud pipes save lives while setting off car alarms at 6 a.m. makes you the neighborhood nuisance. The rest of us are just trying to figure out how a vehicle that weighs as much as a small planet and has the turning radius of an oil tanker counts as a nimble form of transportation. But here's the thing, behind all that chrome and leather beats the heart of genuine motorcycle culture. When charity rides need participants, Harley folks show up in droves. When a rider is stranded, even one on a Japanese sport bike, it's often the Harley rider who stops first. You might be loud, proud, and slightly obnoxious, but you're keeping a uniquely American tradition alive. And there's something genuinely cool about that, even if we'll never admit it to your face. What if you put handlebars on a cruise ship? You get the Kawasaki ZN13000 Voyager. The standard Z1300 was already a behemoth with its 1300cc six-cylinder engine, but Kawasaki wasn't satisfied. They added fairings, saddlebags, a trunk, and enough plastic to keep petroleum companies profitable for years. The result was a touring motorcycle that weighed nearly 900 pounds wet, about the same as a small rhinoceros. The ideal tourer, until it's not. It may run smooth like melted butter sliding down the hood of a Cadillac due to its inline six-cylinder, with over 1,286 cubic centimeters and 120 horsepower. But it added so much weight, the bike handled like a runaway upright piano. At nearly 800 pounds wet, this beast was less Voyager, more cargo freighter. It's like putting a jet engine on a lawnmower. You don't ride a ZN1300, you captain it. It is so massive that turning is quite difficult. And then there's the reliability. These bikes are famous for surprising electrical failures, vacuum line issues, and carburetors that seemingly adjust themselves at random. Long-distance touring on one of these is basically Russian roulette with spark plugs. If you're planning a cross-country ride on a Voyager, bring tools, and maybe a priest. And fuel economy? Don't ask. The ZN1300 drinks gas like it's trying to forget its own existence. You'd be filling up at every rest stop while watching actual Goldwings cruise by with smug grins and half-full tanks. Bimota ownership is less about transportation and more about owning a rolling dissertation on motorcycle engineering. You didn't buy a bike. You invested in a mechanical philosophy that most people will never understand or appreciate. Your Tesi or DB series represents the intersection of Italian design and engineering obsession taken to its logical extreme. You can explain the benefits of hub center steering with the passion of someone defending their doctoral thesis, even though you're the only person who asked the question. The rest of us are exhausted by your lectures on advanced chassis dynamics while you struggle to find anyone who can service your mechanical unicorn. You've turned exclusivity into a personality trait, and your bike spends more time being explained than written. Your idea of casual conversation involves terms like anti-dive geometry and mass centralization, and you treat every parking lot encounter like a teaching opportunity that nobody requested. But your appreciation for engineering excellence pushes the entire motorcycle industry forward. You're supporting innovation that trickles down to the rest of us. And your willingness to embrace radical engineering solutions reminds us that motorcycles can be more than just transportation. They can be art. When your Bimota is working properly, it demonstrates what's possible when engineers are allowed to dream without compromise. And your support for cutting-edge technology keeps motorcycling from becoming stagnant. Powered by a battery that produces 105 horsepower and 86 foot-pounds of torque, the Livewire could have been revolutionary. Instead, it's a $30,000 monument to missed opportunities. The criticism here is that it tries to be a Harley for the modern age, but ends up being a very expensive experiment. This 550-pound electric motorcycle offers a paltry 146-mile range in the city and much less on the highway, making it impractical for the long rides Harley owners typically enjoy. It's the equivalent of buying a boat that's afraid of water. The Livewire is a Harley that doesn't sound like a Harley, doesn't look like a Harley, and doesn't ride like a Harley. It's an identity crisis with handlebars, marketed to environmentally conscious riders who somehow have $30,000 to spend on a motorcycle, but not enough sense to buy one that can actually go the distance. And let's talk about charging. Hope you enjoy spending 40 minutes at a DC fast charger or an entire night on a standard outlet. Nothing says freedom of the open road quite like planning your route around charging stations and bringing a good book for the weights. The Livewire is the perfect bike for someone who wants to tell their friends they care about the environment, but doesn't actually need to go anywhere. Benelli ownership is what happens when you see a beautiful Italian motorcycle at a suspiciously reasonable price and decide to ignore every red flag your brain is frantically waving. You didn't buy transportation, you entered a lottery where the prize is occasionally getting to your destination. Your TNT or TRK represents your faith in the power of Italian styling to overcome Chinese manufacturing reality. You've become an expert at explaining why your bike is basically Italian, while conveniently omitting details about its actual production location. The rest of us watch in fascination as you defend build quality that would make a Harbor Freight tool blush. You've turned optimism into a survival skill and treat warranty claims like they're part of the ownership experience. Your relationship with your dealer is more intimate than most marriages and significantly more expensive, and you've developed an almost supernatural ability to find silver linings in mechanical disasters. The way you justify buying Italian styling with Chinese reliability while paying European prices is a masterclass in cognitive dissonance. But your willingness to take chances on the underdog keeps competition alive in the motorcycle market. You're supporting innovation and keeping prices competitive for the rest of us, and your optimistic approach to motorcycling reminds us that sometimes the journey is more important than actually arriving. When your Benelli is running well, it proves that beautiful motorcycles don't have to cost a fortune. And your faith in second chances gives struggling manufacturers the support they need to improve. When motorcycle manufacturers hire famous designers with zero motorcycle experience, you get the Aprilia Moto 6.5, a bike designed by Philippe Starck, a man known for furniture design who apparently thought motorcycles should look like melted plastic toys. The Moto 6.5 is what happens when style aggressively overpowers substance. Powered by a single-cylinder 650cc engine that produces a yawn-inducing 43 horsepower. This bike manages to be both underpowered and overpriced. It's like paying for a Ferrari and getting a Fiat with a fancy paint job. Let's talk about that design. The Moto 6.5 looks like it was created by someone who had only ever seen motorcycles in cartoons. It features bizarre plastic panels, an awkward seat that looks like an afterthought, and ergonomics that seem designed specifically to make physiotherapists wealthy. The riding experience is equally disappointing. The engine vibrates like it's trying to escape the frame, the suspension feels like it was salvaged from a shopping cart, and the handling is best described as unpredictable, and not in an exciting way. Very mediocre, especially for an Aprilia. With no aftermarket at all, this bike received no attention from riders. You want accessories, parts, upgrades, mods? Non-existent. Was meant for short city rides, but still uncomfortable doing that. Nobody supported it, not even its own company Aprilia. Broke something? Your best answer is to make furniture out of the whole thing instead. Oh, but some do love it until now, the design hipsters. That's why you'll most likely only see it in museums, not roads. Royal Enfield ownership is less about motorcycling and more about time travel with training wheels. You didn't buy a bike. You purchased a lifestyle that peaked sometime around 1955, and you're determined to keep it on life support. Your Interceptor or Classic 350 leaks oil with such consistency that you've started carrying absorbent pads like their standard riding gear. You've memorized the company's colonial history and can recite manufacturing dates, like you're defending a doctoral thesis on British motorcycle imperialism. The motorcycle community collectively eye-rolls at your "they don't make them like they used to" lectures while watching you frantically Google "Royal Enfield dealer near me" for the third time this month. You've convinced yourself that 35 horsepower is plenty for real riding, while the rest of us lap you on highway on-ramps. Your Instagram feed looks like a sepia-toned museum exhibit, complete with vintage leather jackets that cost more than most people's bikes, and you can't ride to Starbucks without stopping for a photo shoot. But your dedication to keeping classic motorcycling aesthetics alive in a world of plastic fairings and digital displays is genuinely admirable. You're preserving a connection to motorcycling's romantic past, and there's something beautifully authentic about choosing character over convenience. Your Royal Enfield might be slow, but it has soul in a way that modern bikes sometimes lack. And your commitment to the riding experience over pure performance reminds us why we fell in love with motorcycles in the first place. Yamaha Tenere ownership represents the Japanese approach to adventure riding, thoroughly researched, properly equipped, and executed with the precision of a military operation. You didn't buy a motorcycle, you invested in a mobile base camp that happens to have 2 wheels. Your T7 is equipped with more accessories than most people's garages, and you can justify every single purchase with detailed explanations about specific riding scenarios. You've turned packing for a trip into an engineering exercise that would impress NASA logistics coordinators. The adventure riding community secretly envies your level of preparation, while publicly mocking your inability to leave the house without consulting weather reports, GPS coordinates, and backup plans for your backup plans. You've turned spontaneous adventure into a carefully orchestrated expedition, complete with spreadsheets and contingency protocols. Your idea of roughing it involves more gear than most people take on month-long vacations, and you treat every ride like you're crossing the Sahara even when you're just going to the grocery store. But your methodical approach to adventure riding means you're actually out there exploring, while others are still planning. Your Tenere will reliably get you to places others only dream about, and your preparation ensures you'll make it back safely. In a world of Instagram adventurers, you're doing the real thing with competence and reliability that's genuinely impressive. Your systematic approach to motorcycling opens up possibilities that spontaneous riders miss, and your stories of successful expeditions inspire the rest of us to plan our own adventures. If you've ever wanted to waste a small fortune on a motorcycle that's basically unusable, the Honda Rune is your dream come true. Honda decided to take their reliable Goldwing platform and transform it into what can only be described as a rolling art exhibit that nobody asked for. If you've ever wanted to own a concept bike that accidentally made it into production, meet the Honda Rune. It is the most stylish yet confusing bike that was ever made, being covered with insane chrome at the fenders, forks, pipes, and even the radiator. The Rune features a massive 1832 cubic centimeter flat-six engine that, while powerful, is completely wasted in this chassis. The bike weighs a staggering 850 pounds. You read that correctly? It's heavier than some small cars. Try maneuvering that beast in a parking lot, and you'll need a chiropractor appointment immediately afterward. Just by using it, you can feel the weight of the bike. Beautifully designed, but very terrible to ride far. Honda somehow managed to create a cruiser that simultaneously stretched out like a chopper, yet cramped like a sports bike. Your arms reach for handlebars that feel like they're in another zip code, while your legs are awkwardly folded beneath you. Good luck on turning at low speeds with this one. It's basically driving a grand piano with handlebars. And the price? When it launched in 2004, Honda had the audacity to charge nearly $30,000 for this monstrosity. That's right, 30 grand for what was essentially a Goldwing engine, stuffed into a frame designed by someone who had clearly consumed too many energy drinks. But the real kicker? Honda only made them for 2 years because, surprise, nobody wanted to buy them. Now collectors try to convince themselves they're rare treasures worth preserving. No, they're not rare because they're special. They're rare because they were a terrible idea from the start. It's not even considered as a sport bike nor as a tourer. You are literally just driving a very shiny machine. The Rune is a bike that says, "I bought this to impress people who don't ride." Honda riders value function over form with almost religious dedication. You researched your motorcycle purchase for months, reading every comparison test and reliability survey before confidently selecting the most sensible option available. Your maintenance schedule isn't just followed, it's anticipated. You change your oil 100 miles before the manual suggests because it's just good practice. Your garage is organized with laboratory precision, and your tools are arranged by size and function. The rest of us mock your utter lack of excitement about motorcycling. You approach riding with all the passion of someone selecting a refrigerator, prioritizing reliability statistics over soul. Your CBR has all the personality of a kitchen appliance, and you ride with the enthusiasm of someone filing their taxes. We're out here having emotional relationships with our bikes, while you're basically commuting on a calculator with wheels. Yet there's something admirable about your drama-free approach to motorcycling. While we're posting breakdown stories on forums, you're actually riding. When we're waiting for parts, you're racking up miles. Your Honda might not stir the soul, but it never breaks your heart either. There's wisdom in choosing a motorcycle that just works every single time, without the emotional roller coaster. You're not passionate about motorcycles. You're passionate about motorcycling, and maybe that's the smarter approach all along. Norton ownership is what happens when you confuse brand loyalty with Stockholm Syndrome. You didn't buy a motorcycle, you adopted a mechanical orphan that requires constant emotional support and financial intervention. Your Commando or modern Norton represents your unwavering faith in British engineering, despite overwhelming evidence that this faith might be misplaced. You've memorized the company's bankruptcy timeline with the dedication of a historian studying the fall of Rome. The motorcycle community watches in fascination as you defend vibration levels that would qualify as industrial equipment and electrical systems designed by people who apparently never heard of reliability. You've turned mechanical quirks into personality features and treat oil leaks like they're marking territory. Your definition of running well would horrify owners of functional motorcycles, and you've developed an almost supernatural ability to rationalize problems that would send normal people straight to the Honda dealer. But your dedication to keeping British motorcycle heritage alive is genuinely touching. You're preserving a piece of motorcycling history through sheer force of will and unlimited optimism, and there's something beautifully romantic about your commitment to the underdog. Your Norton connects you to motorcycling's golden age in a way that modern bikes simply can't. And your persistence in keeping these temperamental machines running preserves craftsmanship and character that the world desperately needs. The Kawasaki Ninja 250 is an icon in the rider's world. Now, before the pitchforks come out, the Kawasaki Ninja 250 isn't a bad motorcycle. In fact, it's an excellent beginner bike. The problem isn't the bike itself, it's the people who buy it for all the wrong reasons. Every year, thousands of wannabe racers purchase Ninja 250s thinking they're getting miniature superbikes. They slap on aftermarket exhausts, flashy graphics, and frame sliders, convinced they're one mod away from MotoGP glory. The reality? They're still riding a 250cc motorcycle that struggles to outrun a determined cyclist on a hill with a 249 cubic centimeter engine, reaching 32 horsepower. It's light, forgiving, and reliable, but that doesn't stop clueless riders. These misguided souls spend thousands customizing their Ninja 250S, often investing more in modifications than the bike is worth. They'll add power commanders, air filters, and race fairings to a bike that makes all of 30 horsepower on a good day. It's like putting a spoiler on a golf cart. It doesn't make it faster, it just makes you look silly. Spoiler? It's not. It's the training wheels of sport bikes. It's a slow one at most. If you are an experienced rider who can easily use bikes, this one is a very unnecessary choice. It's a lawnmower. The saddest part? Many of these over-modified Ninja 250s barely get ridden. Their owners quickly realize that no amount of carbon fiber can transform their beginner bike into a ZX10R. So the bike sits in the garage, a monument to misplaced enthusiasm. Sounds so sharp that it's either an angry hairdryer or a mosquito passing by at a disappointing speed. It's a great beginner bike. You can learn how to ride without dying, and that's honestly very rare for a sports bike. If you want a Ninja 250, buy one for what it is, a brilliant beginner motorcycle. But if you're purchasing one thinking you'll transform it into a track weapon, you might as well set your money on fire. At least that would provide some actual heat. Triumph riders have elevated motorcycling to an art form where aesthetics are equally important as performance. Your Bonneville, Thruxton, or Speed Triple isn't just transportation. It's a carefully curated expression of your personal brand. You've spent more time selecting the perfect leather gloves to match your bike than most people spend choosing a college major. Your helmet collection is displayed like fine art, and each one has a story about the small batch manufacturer who handcrafts them in a converted barn somewhere. The rest of us are tired of your Instagram photo shoots in front of brick walls and your lectures about authentic motorcycling experience. You've turned riding into performance art, and your bike spends more time being photographed than actually ridden. You can't just enjoy a motorcycle. You have to create an entire aesthetic around it, complete with matching boots, jacket, and carefully curated facial hair. But your appreciation for the artistry of motorcycling reminds the rest of us why these machines captivate us in the first place. You see beauty where others see transportation, and your attention to detail elevates the entire culture. Behind the carefully crafted image is genuine passion for motorcycling history and design. You're preserving a connection to motorcycling's golden age while embracing modern performance, creating a bridge between generations of riders. Just maybe ease up on the filtered photos. We get it. Your bike looks good. Powered by a microscopic 124cc single-cylinder engine that produces a laughable 12 horsepower, the Eliminator is neither eliminating nor impressive. It struggles to reach 65 miles per hour downhill with a tailwind, yet somehow Kawasaki had the audacity to style it like a cruiser. It tries to look like a big, bad cruiser, but has the heart of a lawnmower. Despite its excellent 70 miles per gallon fuel economy, this 290-pound cruiser is the motorcycle equivalent of a Chihuahua wearing a spiked collar, trying desperately to look tough while being fundamentally unthreatening. The Eliminator 125 is a bike for people who want to look like they ride a Harley but have the budget and courage of someone who should stick to bicycles. The seat height is low enough for almost anyone, which is convenient because that's about the only demographic this bike appeals to, anyone who doesn't know better. The suspension is so basic, it makes a pogo stick look sophisticated, and the brakes require the planning and foresight usually reserved for space missions. If you're over 160 pounds, congratulations, you've just become the most powerful component on the motorcycle. Kawasaki mercifully discontinued this model, yet somehow they still occasionally appear for sale, usually by owners who finally realized that cruiser styling doesn't actually make a 125cc bike cool. Don't get me wrong, the Ducati Panigale is an engineering masterpiece, a stunning achievement in motorcycle design, and one of the most capable superbikes ever created. It's also completely wasted on 90% of the people who buy it. A very powerful track weapon, equipped with aerodynamics and loaded with tech. It's not just a bike, it's a statement. With over 1103cc and 214 horsepower V4 engine, race-spec suspension, an electronics suite more advanced than most fighter jets, this thing is born for the racetrack. It's basically a MotoGP tech that barely made itself street legal. Being the fastest bike in the market, it is also one of the most misused ones. The Panigale is a bike that demands respect and skill. Its aggressive riding position, razor-sharp handling, and explosive power delivery require a level of competence that weekend warriors simply don't possess. Yet these riders convince themselves that owning a Ducati somehow transfers racing ability through osmosis. It's supposed to go through speeds, not under 30. No wonder there are complaints of it overheating. They are driving a 214 horsepower down city streets on speed limit. Some even buy this just for attention. All they do is flex their bike and pose in front of women. Ducati Panigale equals instant chick magnet in their mind. Look at me! I have the fastest bike out here! Pay attention to me only. I'm the coolest one. They don't even use it properly. If you can't even ride a 300cc, don't buy this hell of a machine. Most owners never leave third gear. They're too scared to open the throttle, too stiff to lean, and too proud to admit they bought way more bikes than they can handle. The Panigale isn't a toy. It's a scalpel. A scalpel in the hands of someone who's never used anything sharper than a butter knife. Not only you will embarrass yourself in front of experienced bikers, but also other Panigale owners that actually know the true value of such a bike. Like it's a cool bike, just not in the right hands. Ducati ownership is less a transportation choice and more a passionate love affair with mechanical art. You don't just ride, you experience your motorcycle, often describing the sound of your dry clutch as mechanical symphony, with zero irony. Your relationship with your Ducati dealer's service department is more consistent than most of your personal relationships. You've got their number saved under Italian therapist, and you're on a first-name basis with everyone from the service manager to the courtesy shuttle driver. The rest of us can't stand your pretentious attitude about Italian engineering while we watch you stranded yet again with electrical gremlins. You've turned motorcycle maintenance into a personality trait, acting like spending half your paycheck on desmodromic valve adjustments is some kind of virtue. The way you look down your nose at Japanese bikes while secretly envying their reliability is the two-wheeled equivalent of claiming you prefer vinyl while streaming Spotify when nobody's looking. But damn it, when that Italian twin is singing and you're carving through canyons, you make the rest of us question our life choices. There's something undeniably special about Ducati's racing heritage and the way they blend art with engineering. Your passion for the experience of riding, not just the destination, reminds us all why we fell in love with motorcycles in the first place. Just maybe tone down the Italian passion speeches after your third espresso, okay? Want to meet the Grim Reaper? Buy a Kawasaki Ninja H2R. The H2R isn't a motorcycle. It's a statement that says, my bank account is bigger than my common sense. Let's start with the obvious. The H2R is not street legal. It says so right on the bike. It has no headlights, no turn signals, no mirrors, and emissions that would make an oil refinery blush. Yet somehow, people still buy these $55,000 machines and then complain that they can't ride them on public roads. What exactly did you think you were buying? With specs made of 998 cubic centimeters inline, 4 supercharged, topping 310 horsepower. This is the definition of ride now, hospital later. The H2R makes over 310 horsepower in a package that weighs less than 450 pounds. For comparison, that's more power-to-weight ratio than a Bugatti Chiron. It's a bike so powerful that even professional racers approach it with caution. Yet somehow, dentists and software engineers with more money than sense convince themselves they need this level of performance. You may have money to buy it now, not enough money to fix it later. This bike does not belong anywhere. Firstly, it is too fast for a public road. Secondly, it is too loud. Lastly, you will eventually off yourself with it. It's not a bike, it's a machine to meet God. Want to get one? Make sure you have a guardian angel with you. A little twist on that throttle can make you see a glimpse of the stairways to heaven. Why dumb? Because only the ones who actually would dare to use these are the ones who are not scared for their life. Yeah, it's cool, until you crash and wake up to a red and blue light above you. Surprise! Not only did you lose $1,000, but also a limb. This is the motorcycle equivalent of a Chihuahua wearing a spiked collar, trying desperately to look tough while being fundamentally unthreatening. Powered by a wheezy 248cc parallel twin engine that produces a yawn-inducing 25 horsepower, this bike struggles to outrun a determined cyclist on a hill. Yet every year, thousands of wannabe racers slap on aftermarket exhausts, flashy graphics, and frame sliders, convinced they're one mod away from MotoGP glory. The problem here isn't about the bike itself. It's actually a decent beginner motorcycle. The problem is the people who buy it thinking they're getting a mini Hayabusa. These misguided souls spend thousands customizing their GSX250Rs, often investing more in modifications than the bike is worth. They'll add power commanders, air filters, and race fairings to a bike that gets about 65 miles per gallon, but couldn't pull the skin off a rice pudding. It's like putting a spoiler on a golf cart. It doesn't make it faster, it just makes you look silly. The saddest part? Many of these over-modified GSX250Rs barely get ridden. Their owners quickly realize that no amount of carbon fiber can transform their beginner bike into a GSX-R 1000. So, the bike sits in the garage, a monument to misplaced enthusiasm, sounding like an angry hairdryer when it does run. It's a great beginner bike. You can learn how to ride without dying, and that's honestly very rare for a sports bike. But if you're purchasing one thinking you'll transform it into a track weapon, you might as well set your money on fire. At least that would provide some actual heat. MV Agusta ownership isn't a transportation choice. It's a commitment to suffering beautifully. You didn't buy a motorcycle. You entered into an abusive relationship with Italian engineering that you'll defend with Stockholm Syndrome-level dedication. Your F4 or Brutal spends more time being admired in your garage than actually running, and you've convinced yourself this is part of the authentic Italian experience. You know your local MV dealer's coffee preferences and have their parts department on speed dial. The rest of us watch in horror as you defend electrical problems that would make a Ducati owner blush. You've turned mechanical unreliability into a badge of honor, acting like push-starting a $20,000 motorcycle is some kind of spiritual journey. Your bike looks like it was designed by angels but engineered by people who clearly hate motorcyclists, and you spend more on maintenance than most people spend on their entire bike. But damn, when that Italian artwork is running properly, it's pure motorcycle poetry in motion. Your willingness to endure mechanical drama for moments of transcendent beauty reminds us why we fell in love with motorcycles in the first place. You're keeping the most exclusive slice of Italian motorcycle culture alive, and when your MV is singing through the gears, it creates moments of pure mechanical ecstasy that justify every frustrating breakdown. Your commitment to beauty over practicality preserves something magical in motorcycling. Imagine paying motorcycle prices for something that removes everything fun about riding a motorcycle. That's the BMW C1, a scooter with delusions of grandeur that somehow managed to combine the worst aspects of cars and motorcycles into one baffling package. The C1 was BMW's attempt to create a safe motorcycle by adding a roof, windshield, and seatbelts. Yes, seatbelts on a motorcycle. The result looked like what would happen if a smart car and a scooter had an ugly baby that neither wanted to claim. Powered by a wheezy 125cc or 200cc engine, the C1 wasn't just slow, it was glacial, and despite its car-like pretensions, it offered none of a car's benefits. No air conditioning, no decent storage space, and certainly no dignity when seen in public. There's no doubt this is one of the dumbest designs of BMW. It's a scooter trying to blend in with cars. A chunky scooter at best, slow, terrible center of gravity, and absolutely hard to park. The final insult? In many countries, you still needed a motorcycle license to ride it, and in some places, you were still required to wear a helmet, despite BMW's insistence that the roll cage made helmets unnecessary. So you got all the bureaucratic hassle of motorcycle ownership with none of the fun. BMW mercifully discontinued the C1 after just a few years of dismal sales. Today, they occasionally pop up for sale as unique collector's items, which is code for "Please take this embarrassment off my hands." BMW riders approach motorcycling with the precision of German engineering. Your idea of packing light for a trip includes 3 waterproof layers, a toolkit that would make a mechanic jealous, and emergency rations that could sustain you through nuclear winter. You've got more acronyms on your bike than the military has in their entire operation manual. From ESA, ABS to ASC to DTC, you can recite what each one does and why it's essential for your 7-mile commute to work. The motorcycle community collectively rolls their eyes at your all the gear, all the time lectures, and the way you've turned basic safety into moral superiority. Your $3,000 Klim Adventure suit has never seen dirt, and you treat the owner's manual like religious text. The rest of us are tired of hearing how your electronically adjustable suspension makes our bikes feel like covered wagons, while you fiddle with your GPS to find the nearest Starbucks on your adventure. But secretly, we all wish we had your level of preparation when the skies open up and you're the only one riding comfortably through a downpour. Your methodical approach to maintenance means your bike will still be running perfectly when ours are long scrapped. In a world of Instagram posers, you're actually putting serious miles on your machines, crossing continents while the rest of us debate the merits of different exhaust notes. You might be the motorcycle equivalent of the kid who reminded the teacher about homework, but you're doing this whole motorcycling thing properly. This is what happens when a company looks at Japanese sport bikes and thinks, we can make that, but worse in every way. Powered by a 249cc V-twin engine that somehow manages to produce only 28 horsepower despite having twice the cylinders of its Japanese competitors, the GT250R is a masterclass in disappointment. It weighs a porky 375 pounds wet, making its power-to-weight ratio similar to that of an asthmatic hamster. The criticism here is that it tries to look like a sports bike, but performs like a scooter. Despite getting a reasonable 65 miles per gallon, the Hyosung is the motorcycle equivalent of those knockoff designer sunglasses you buy from a street vendor. It looks vaguely like the real thing until you actually use it. The fit and finish would make Fisher-Price blush, with plastics that seem designed to crack if you look at them too intensely. The electrical system appears to have been designed by someone whose understanding of electricity came from rubbing balloons on their hair. Owners report mysterious electrical gremlins that would baffle even the most experienced mechanics. And let's talk about resale value, or rather, the complete lack thereof. Buy a GT250R new, and by the time you ride it home, it's already depreciated more than a banana left in the sun. Parts availability? Hope you enjoy waiting weeks for shipping from Korea, assuming the parts are even still made. The GT250R is the perfect bike for someone who wants to look like they ride a sports bike, but doesn't want any of the reliability, performance, or respect that comes with owning a Japanese or European machine. Hyosung ownership is what happens when you want a motorcycle that looks like $1 million bucks, but costs about as much as a decent bicycle. You didn't buy a motorcycle, you purchased a rolling experiment in how close can we get to a real bike without actually being one. Your GT650R, or GV650, represents your unwavering faith in Korean engineering and your ability to ignore every warning sign that screams, you get what you pay for. You've memorized every forum post about common problems and consider yourself a shade tree mechanic by necessity rather than choice. The rest of us watch in horror as you defend build quality that makes Harbor Freight tools look premium while your bike develops new and creative ways to break down. You've turned optimism into a survival skill, and your garage looks like a motorcycle emergency room with more broken parts than functional ones. The way you justify buying a bike that costs less than most people's riding gear while acting surprised when it doesn't perform like a premium machine is peak bargain hunter delusion. But your willingness to take chances on the underdog keeps motorcycle prices competitive for everyone else. You're proving that you don't need to spend a fortune to experience the joy of motorcycling. And when your Hyosung is actually running, it delivers surprisingly decent performance for the money. Your budget-conscious approach reminds us that motorcycling should be accessible to everyone, not just people with premium budgets. Plus, you've developed mechanical skills that put most riders to shame, even if it was through necessity rather than choice. This is what happens when someone looks at a motorcycle and thinks, this would be better if it was more like a snowmobile with wheels. Powered by a Rotax 998 CEE cc V-twin engine, in most models that produces around 100 horsepower, the Spyder isn't a motorcycle. It's a 1,000-pound identity crisis. It has 3 wheels, a car-like seat, and the handling characteristics of a shopping cart with a wonky wheel. Offering the thrill of motorcycling without any of the actual thrill, despite getting only about 35 miles per gallon, the Spyder costs as much as a decent car, starting at around $17,000 and going up to $27,000 for models that come with more unnecessary gadgets than a Sky Mall catalog. The Spyder removes everything that makes motorcycling enjoyable: the lean, the connection to the road, the sense of freedom, and replaces it with a bloated, overcomplicated machine that handles like a drunk rhinoceros. It doesn't lean into corners, it plows through them with all the grace of a bulldozer. The Spyder is the perfect vehicle for someone who wants to tell everyone they ride a motorcycle, but is terrified of actually riding one. It's the motorcycle equivalent of those swimming pools with the plastic lane dividers. Technically, you're in the water, but no one's impressed by your bravery. Yamaha riders represent the perfect middle ground of motorcycling. Technical enough to appreciate engineering, but not so obsessed that it becomes your entire personality. You chose your bike after careful consideration of performance, reliability, and value, creating a Venn diagram where all three circles overlap perfectly. You take quiet pride in knowing your R1's crossplane crankshaft shares technology with MotoGP bikes, but you don't feel the need to mention this in every conversation. Your modifications are tasteful and functional rather than flashy, focusing on subtle improvements rather than attention-grabbing additions. The rest of us find your middle-of-the-road approach almost suspiciously balanced. You're not Italian exotic enough for the Ducati crowd, not adventure-ready enough for the BMW folks, and not American enough for the Harley tribe. Your reasonable approach to motorcycling makes you nearly invisible in a community that thrives on strong opinions and tribal identities. You're the motorcycle equivalent of saying your favorite ice cream flavor is vanilla. Technically fine, but suspiciously lacking in commitment. Yet your balanced approach makes you perhaps the most complete motorcyclist of all. You're skilled without being reckless, knowledgeable without being pretentious, and passionate without being obsessive. Your bike strikes the perfect balance between reliability and character, performance and practicality. While the rest of us are defending our extreme choices, you're quietly enjoying the best of all worlds. There's wisdom in moderation, even if it doesn't make for the most exciting Instagram content. The B-King started life as a concept bike featuring the engine from the Hayabusa, the world's fastest production motorcycle. By the time it reached production in 2007, it had transformed into a 1,340cc naked bike that produced 181 horsepower and weighed a staggering 518 pounds wet. Was built to be a superbike for the street, but ends up being a heavy, unwieldy beast. This monstrosity gets a dismal 30 miles per gallon and features exhaust pipes the size of industrial drainage systems. The styling can best be described as what would happen if a transformer had indigestion, all bulges and unnecessary plastic in places where no plastic should be. Despite its impressive power, the B-King handles like a supertanker thanks to its weight and bizarre weight distribution. It's too powerful for the street, too heavy for the track, and too ugly for photographs. It's a bike without a purpose, a solution to a problem no one had. The B-King was so poorly received that Suzuki discontinued it after just 3 years, making it one of the shortest production runs for a flagship model from a major manufacturer. Today, they occasionally appear for sale, usually by owners who finally realized that having the biggest engine doesn't actually translate to having the most fun. The B-King is the perfect bike for someone who wants to tell everyone how fast their motorcycle is, while secretly being terrified to use more than 20% of the throttle. It's the motorcycle equivalent of buying a supercomputer to check your email. Impressive on paper, ridiculous in practice. Indian motorcycle owners are history buffs with a rebellious streak. You didn't just buy a motorcycle, you invested in American heritage with a side of contrarianism. Your garage contains at least one book about the history of American motorcycling, which you've highlighted extensively. You take immense satisfaction in correcting Harley owners about which company came first, and you've memorized production dates and historical milestones to support your position in these debates. Your knowledge of flathead engines and board track racing would qualify you for a teaching position at a motorcycle history department, if such a thing existed. The rest of us are exhausted by your, well, actually, approach to American motorcycling. You've turned being a contrarian into a lifestyle choice, defining yourself by what you're not, a Harley rider, rather than what you are. You can't just enjoy your bike. You have to deliver a history lecture that nobody asked for, complete with references to the original Springfield factory and the 1920s racing team. But your dedication to preserving an alternative American motorcycle tradition adds valuable diversity to the riding community. You've rescued an iconic American brand from the history books and given it new life. Your knowledge of motorcycling history enriches the entire community, even if we pretend to check our phones when you start talking about board track racers. Behind the historical obsession is a genuine appreciation for engineering excellence and American craftsmanship that transcends brand tribalism. The iconic Yamaha R1 that was inspired by Valentino Rossi's M1 MotoGP bike one of the fastest bikes out there and built with MotoGP level electronics. But this bike is so intense that it does not trust its own riders. It's a 998 cubic centimeter inline-4 monster with a crossplane crank that makes it sound like an angry chainsaw opera. It revs to the moon, hits triple digits in a blink, and will absolutely yeet you into a ditch if you're not paying attention. Now, what's so bad about it? It's not a bad bike, it just gets used by the wrong people. Just like our Ducati Panigale 5.4, some buy it for attracting eyes and ears. Unless you live near or at a racetrack, you are just dragging a loud banshee through red lights and school zones. This bike wants to go 180 miles per hour, while you just want to get Starbucks, not a healthy relationship. It was designed to be a track bike, knees to your ears, wrists on fire, absolutely no seat padding, and having a cuddle moment with the fuel tank. No wonder some complain about the seating position because they are using it oppositely from its main purpose. That is not a cruiser, that is a superbike on the highway. Running this at low speeds not only ruins its gears and minimizes driver comfort, it also creates so much heat just right under the seat. This bike was made for track riders, not for wannabe main characters in the city. KTM ownership isn't just a motorcycle choice, it's a personality disorder disguised as a transportation decision. Your idea of a relaxing Sunday ride includes terrain that would challenge a mountain goat, and you consider pavement a necessary evil between dirt sections. Your motorcycle has more suspension travel than most riders have courage, and you use every millimeter of it regularly. Your riding gear looks like it was designed by someone who exclusively consumes energy drinks and action movies, with more neon colors than a 1980s dance party. The rest of us are exhausted just listening to your stories about sending it over obstacles that would give mountain goats pause. Your entire personality revolves around how extreme your last ride was, and you treat basic self-preservation as a character flaw. Your maintenance schedule is best described as ride it until something breaks, then jump it anyway. The phrase "hold my beer" seems to precede most of your riding decisions. But your unbridled enthusiasm for pushing limits is secretly inspiring. When the rest of us are calculating risks, you're calculating airtime. Your willingness to get back up after spectacular crashes shows a resilience that's genuinely admirable. You approach motorcycling with a purity of purpose, finding the absolute limit of what's possible on two wheels, and there's something beautifully uncomplicated about that philosophy. You remind us that motorcycling should be an adventure, not just transportation, even if your version of adventure requires an on-call orthopedic surgeon. Moto Morini ownership is what happens when you want to be different, but not so different that you can't find parts. You didn't buy a motorcycle. You selected a conversation piece that requires constant explanation to confused onlookers. Your Corsaro or modern Morini represents your commitment to supporting the underdog of Italian motorcycling. You've become an amateur historian by necessity, able to recite the company's history and explain why your bike is basically a Ducati but better to anyone who'll listen. The motorcycle community politely nods while you explain your bike's unique features, secretly wondering why you didn't just buy something they've actually heard of. You've turned obscurity into a virtue and treat your bike's rarity like it's a precious artifact rather than transportation. Your garage contains more literature about your motorcycle than most people have about their hobbies, and you've memorized production numbers like they're sacred texts. The way you act superior about owning something exclusive while struggling to find basic maintenance items is peak boutique snobbery. But your support for small manufacturers keeps diversity alive in an increasingly homogenized market. You're preserving Italian motorcycle culture beyond the big names, and your passion for the unusual enriches the entire community. Your Morini represents craftsmanship and attention to detail that mass-produced bikes often lack, and your willingness to choose character over convenience keeps unique engineering approaches alive. You're proof that motorcycling is about more than just the biggest brands. Thanks for watching this compilation. Not done watching yet? Click on the next video right now.